Hey there, and welcome. So today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to look up way, way up. We're talking about that one part of a building we all just kind of assume will be there, but we literally couldn't live without. The roof. It's our silent protector, the crown on top of every building, and trust me, it's way more fascinating than you might think. All right, let's get into it.
So let me just ask you this, right off the bat. If you had to pick one single thing, what would you say is the most important part of a building? You might say the foundation, maybe the walls. Well, today we're making a really strong case for what's hanging out over your head.
I mean, think about it. A building without a roof isn't really a building at all, is it? It's just a box. The official definition here says it's the uppermost part, designed to protect us from the weather. But that super simple definition, it hides a ton of incredible engineering and design. This thing isn't just a lid, it's a high-performance shield.
Okay, so what does this shield actually have to do? Well, it turns out it has count them, six essential jobs, and they go way beyond just keeping the rain from dripping on your head. Let's break down what it really takes to be a good roof. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. First, a roof has to have the strength and the stability to hold itself up, right? But also the weight of heavy snow or someone walking on it. Of course, it's got to be waterproof, but that's useless without efficient drainage to get all that water off. Then you've got the invisible jobs, thermal insulation to keep you warm in the winter and cool in the summer, being fire resistant, and even blocking out sound. It's a serious multitasker. So all those demanding jobs can actually be handled by roofs of all different shapes and sizes. And while you can find some pretty wild designs out there, most of them fall into one of four fundamental categories. These are the shapes that create those distinct architectural silhouettes we see everywhere. The two you're going to see the most are without a doubt pitched and flat roofs. The pitched or sloping roof is that classic triangle shape you probably drew on houses as a kid. It's fantastic for shedding rain and snow. Now, flat roofs, they're perfect for places where you don't get a ton of rain. But get this, despite the name, they aren't actually flat. They have a very slight slope, less than 10 degrees, just to make sure water can still find its way off. And then we get into the more dramatic shapes. You've got your curved roofs, which can be shaped like an arc or even more complex curves. And a domed roof is basically a variation of that, just curving in 3 dimensions. The dome is the strongest shape of all, but man, it requires some serious skill to build one right. Okay, so we've covered the outside shapes. Now, let's do the cool part. Let's peel back that outer layer and take a look at the structure holding it all up. When we talk about pitched roofs, this internal frame is basically its skeleton. And the design of that skeleton changes completely depending on how wide of a space it needs to cover. Generally, pitched timber roofs are built in 3 main ways, and each one is a step up in complexity and strength. We start with the simplest form, called single roofs. Then, for bigger spaces, we add more support with what are called double or purlin roofs. And for the really big jobs, we bring in the big guns, the engineered powerhouse known as the trussed roof. Let's check them out. So what you're looking at here is a perfect example of a single roof. See those angled beams? Those are the rafters. And notice how they're only supported at the very top? That's the ridge, and at the very bottom on the walls. It's a really simple, clean design, and it's great for smaller rooms. But it's pretty much limited to spans of about 5 meters, which is roughly 16 feet. So, what happens when your room is wider than 16 feet? Well, you upgrade to a double roof. The absolute game changer here is the addition of purlins. Those are the horizontal beams running along the length of the roof. They give the rafters some much-needed support in the middle, stopping them from sagging and letting you roof much wider spaces without breaking the bank. And for the biggest jobs of all, we have the truss. A truss is honestly an engineering marvel. Look at all those triangles. By arranging smaller pieces of wood into this web of triangles, you create an incredibly strong and rigid frame. It can span huge distances with 0 interior support. This is what makes those big open spaces like gymnasiums and warehouses possible. All right, so we've built our skeleton, whether it's single, double, or trussed. Now it's time to put on the skin. The roof covering is the part we all actually see from the outside, and it's that final critical barrier against the elements. And wow, the choice of materials for that skin is huge. You have everything from really traditional organic materials like thatch and wood, all the way to classic clay tiles. Then you've got more modern industrial stuff like asbestos cement and galvanized iron sheets. And at the top end, you've got beautiful natural stone like slate.
And this slide just perfectly shows the incredible range you're working with. On one end of the spectrum, you've got thatch. It's cheap, it's light, you see it a lot in historic villages, but it's also highly flammable and soaks up water. Then, on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, you have sleet. It's a gorgeous natural stone, it'll last forever, it's totally waterproof, but it's incredibly heavy and, you guessed it, one of the most expensive options you can choose. Or take these two, for example. Tiles are one of the oldest and still most popular materials for houses, partly because they can literally be made from local earth. They give you that classic look and are just solid performers. But metal sheets, they're prized for totally different reasons. They're strong, they're tough, and they're lightweight. And that lightweight quality is a huge deal when you're trying to cover a massive factory roof without putting too much stress on those long-span trusses underneath. So, as we've seen, every single roof is really a combination of these two key things: an internal structure for all the support and an external covering for all the protection. You know, it's this perfect marriage of form and function that really gives a building its final character. At the end of the day, it really all boils down to this simple but powerful idea. A roof is a complete system. You have the structural elements, the skeleton, and the roof coverings, the skin, and they absolutely have to work together perfectly to get the job done. So here's your homework. The next time you're out walking around, just look up. Seriously, try to identify the shapes, take a guess at what kind of skeleton is hiding underneath, and see if you can name the materials on the outside. You officially have all the knowledge you need to become a roof spotter. And that brings us right to our final thought for today. A roof does so much more than just protect a building. It defines its whole character. It's like the final, most important brushstroke on a piece of architecture. So I want you to go take a look at your own roof. What does its shape, its material, and its style say about your home? And maybe, just maybe, what does it say about you?